honour to introduce Dr. Lorna Gold. Lorna is the CEO of FaithInvest, which is a UK-based NGO that supports faiths to invest in line with their beliefs and values for the benefit of people and planet. She currently also serves as the board chair of the Laudato Si Movement. And prior to her current roles, she led Trocaire's policy research and advocacy for almost 2 decades until April 2020. She holds a PhD in economic geography from the University of Glasgow. She's a member of the Vatican Commission on the Post-COVID World Task Force on Economy. And she's written a number of books. Her 2018 book, Climate Generation: Awakening to Our Children's Future, has recently been republished by Beehive Books, and it was described by Naomi Klein as an anguished journey into the heart of the climate crisis. It tells her personal story of waking up to the reality of the ecological emergency as a mother, an academic, and a person of faith. So a huge welcome, Lorna, and we look forward to whatever the Spirit brings you to say to us today. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Melanie. And I can't say just what a joy it is to be with you all this evening. Really, really wonderful to see so many old friends and new friends. I'm going to try and put myself off the camera here so I can see all your faces and not be staring at me. But it really is. I see some from the Scottish Laity Network, from Eco Congregation Scotland, from the Focolare, Green Christian, Christian Climate Action, and many others who, at the Laudato Si Movement, sorry, I forgot, many others who I don't know. So it's just lovely to be here and to have this moment together. And as Melanie said, it's not that I prepared a great speech for you. The brief was really from Melanie and from the team was, we've watched the Letter film. Come and share a little bit about your experience and maybe some things that are currently you're working on, and that we can have a conversation, because I'd really love it to be a conversation, not me giving a lecture to you. You don't need me to lecture to you. I think we need to build a sense of fellowship and communion and understanding of where this Christian climate movement is and where it fits within the bigger movement of climate activists that we are part of. So I'll just talk for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then Melanie, as she said, has questions, and then we open the floor to everybody. So maybe just I could start with the Letter film, just to share a little bit of my own experience. I'm assuming that most people who are here tonight have seen the film. If you haven't, I've seen lots of people nodding. If you're off screen, then you can nod or shake your head. If you haven't seen it, maybe this will pique your interest in seeing this film. The film, I have to say, was an absolute labour of love, and probably if I didn't believe in miracles before we made this film, I certainly believe in miracles after it, because it was made by a group of people who, well, the idea was that of Thomas Insua, who's the founder of the Laudato Si Movement, who has no background in filmmaking, who managed somehow to gather the finances, to gather the permissions, co-create this idea to create this film, which would tell somehow the message of Laudato Si, which is really let's say, as somebody says in the film, is the story of the times that we're living in. It's told as the story of the times that we're living in. My own experience in playing, I guess, a small part of it, I was very involved in the production of the film, but also involved, as you saw, in a sense, shepherding these pilgrims from different parts of the world who'd come on a journey to understand what Pope Francis meant in Laudato Si, what he was trying to say in Laudato Si, what relevance it had to them, and then to shepherd them through a journey into the roots of Laudato Si in Assisi. And I can say that what happened in that film, in that documentary, it's a documentary, it's got a special term in terms of how it's the construction of the narrative and how that all happens. But essentially, it's a documentary film, it's real people. And what you see in that film, especially from the real time element of it, which is when we come to Rome, and then we went to Assisi on pilgrimage together, is exactly as it happened. There was no reconstruction of it. There was no making up endings or making up the kind of timings of things that happened. And what's really stuck with me from the film, apart from meeting the Pope, which was quite amazing, you know, the kind of going to the Vatican and the kind of grandeur of meeting the Pope with these incredible people from Latin America and Africa and Hawaii and India. It was what happened after that meeting that stayed with me. It was the journey that we traveled together to Assisi, that it was almost like when we were with the Pope, he kind of turned around to us as the gathered peoples, like, not, I was the only Catholic there, but this gathering of peoples, and said, you need to become like an orchestra. You need to learn to sing together. You need to mobilize your people. He said to the chief in the Amazon, you're the chief of a tribe. You're the one who's going to bring the change. And when we went to Assisi together then, it was, I mean, I'm a great believer in how the Holy Spirit works with no boundaries. It's not like the Holy Spirit only works in Christians or non. It was like we entered into a profound communion with each other and a profound sense or kind of connection with nature in that forest where St. Francis had his original kind of conversion experience. And it is something that will stay with me forever, the sense of being gathered together in that forest and realizing, as everybody in this room, you wouldn't be here if you didn't understand the urgency of the crisis that we're in as on our planet. Recognizing the brokenness of where we're at, the sheer immensity, because Aruna, the young guy from Senegal, received that tragic news right in the middle of this, what you could see was a sublime moment of communion there on the mountaintop, received this crashing news of the death and destruction of his closest friends in the boat in Senegal. And for us there, it was like we had to just hold that. There was something so fragile but so strong between us. It was like holding that pain together, and then together reconciling with each other and recommitting to do our part in tackling the crisis. And it was a solemn moment, the solemnity of recognizing our own grief, our own sense of hopelessness sometimes. Like, we all experience that sense of, well, this is too much for us. But then stepping forward from that and saying, actually, this is not the end of the story. This is not the end of the story. We want to work together across religions, across faiths, and within our own churches to ensure that this is not the end of the story. And in fact, with that film, and I mean, the production of it then and everything was a whole other story with COVID, and like how it came to actually be a film that can be watched, I'll never know. But it has been a really incredible journey of the countless people who've watched it on YouTube in 15 different languages. And then I'm not sure, the last count I heard was 3,000 community screenings, but they're the ones we know about. But community screenings that can be as small as 2 or 3, 5 or 6 people. We were talking about it before you came in, or it can be thousands of people. We launched it in Ireland with the President of Ireland in his residence with 120 invited guests. Incredible event. So it's been an extraordinary experience, and it continues. It's a year on the 4th of October since the film was launched, and you may have heard that Pope Francis, on the same day, will launch Laudate Dominum, which is a follow-up to Laudato Si. And that's not by accident. He will launch, the date is not an accident. The date's the Feast of St. Francis. But it's also the start of the synod, the main synod in the Catholic Church in Rome. The biggest gathering, the most important gathering, people say, in the last, since the Second Vatican Council, some would say. And that is quite extraordinary for Pope Francis. What a statement he's making. And I think what courage. Because he's essentially saying to the church gathering together in Rome, there is no church on a dead planet. Wake up. We can have all these conversations amongst ourselves about synodality and participation and everything, but we need to be mindful of the world, that's what's happening. And I think that's a really powerful sign. And it's a real encouragement to those of us who are working so hard to raise this issue and to counter the denial that's still very much in our societies. I won't, I've taken up my 10 minutes and more already, but maybe in the questions we can get into some of the other work that I'm involved in. As Melanie says, I've just become the CEO of FaithInvest. And that's an interesting role, I have to say, because it's the reason I've taken up this role is because I am more and more convinced that our investment in financial system is at the very, very heart of the problems that we face. And that faith communities, regardless of whether you're Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, have a critical role to play in addressing that. We have trillions invested in the current financial markets. And yet we've professed beliefs and values that are counter to much of what we're currently investing in. So nothing like a major challenge to take on, but I think that it's the focus on fossil fuels that is there right now is so important, and it's key to addressing the damage and preventing further investments in that sector and in other sectors that are causing climate damage is really, really critical right now. I'll stop there and we can have some questions.
Wow, you've opened up some really important themes and ideas there, Lorna. Can we talk about some related things, not directly about the film, although that might come into some of what we talk about? Because you said that the film was about the times we're living in, and we're meeting tonight on the day that the development of the huge Rosebank oil and gas field was approved. And it's kind of against a background where the government has confirmed that hundreds of new oil and gas licenses will be granted in the UK this autumn, when less than 3 weeks ago, at a House of Commons debate on climate finance, out of 352 Conservative MPs, only the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Europe attended, and he stated that it was too early to say how much or even whether the UK would pledge to the Loss and Damage Fund, and where, in the face of climate-driven displacement, the Home Secretary is increasingly using anti-migrant rhetoric. So can I ask the enormous question, where do we go from here? Where do you think we can take this?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, it is at a political level, it's quite depressing, I have to say. It's quite challenging to see what is happening in the UK in particular, and then you look at what is happening also across the water in the United States, and how our electoral systems, our political systems have become, in my view, quite corrupted, and quite the corruption in the sense of the electoral processes now, looking to the next general election with misinformation, with social media, trying to see how we can influence a change is getting more and more tricky, more and more difficult. That said, I think the challenge for us is actually that the climate movement as a whole really suffered during the COVID crisis. It's the strength of the movement that was there before the COVID crisis has really, it waned. It waned definitely for a number of years, but I feel at the moment that it's coming back. There is most definitely a sense that the climate movement has realigned. I don't know so much in Ireland, in the UK, but I certainly know from Ireland and from talking to people in the US that sense of commitment, that sense of urgency is definitely re-emerging. I think we have a challenge around how to grow the base of this movement. I mean, basically what I'm saying, I think campaigning is essential to this. I think that but smart campaigning, looking towards the next general election, looking towards the next local European elections is absolutely key to ensure that climate issues and how they are then kind of formulated and translated into people's lives is put front and center. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that there are easy solutions. I think that we need to keep focused on building and strengthening the movement, and taking every win that comes. And it's not about not being realistic about the bigger political issues, but building the strength of the movement, and almost like trying to prepare for what will come next after. It's a tactic that others have used, that it's not about discounting what's there just now, but playing the long game in terms of being prepared to build the base for when the good moment comes to that change can happen. Because change can happen quickly, even when there seems to be a face of resistance. History has always shown that almost, and I feel right now, it's like we are facing into the most concerted rearguard action of the fossil fuel industry and those who are politically associated with them and financially associated with them, because it's almost like it doesn't stack up. The numbers don't stack up. So it's like we need to speak into that, let's say, speak the truth to power, but also prepare and build the resilience of the climate movement in the face of that.
So that's interesting. Two themes emerge from that. One is about speaking truth to power and continuing to protest in a way, and to say this isn't right. And the other is about engagement, and continuing to work at grassroots engagement and work out how we both renew the movement but also widen it. Would that be a fair summary?
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about campaigning, we need to almost change our whole mindset of what we mean by campaigning, because, and I've really fought this in some of the work that I've been doing recently, that we need campaigners who are lawyers, who are architects, who are financial analysts, energy analysts, who are so almost like we need people who feel this, the urgency of the crisis, and are prepared to sometimes be out on the streets and sometimes be in the rooms, having those, if they have access to those rooms, to those boardrooms, they need to use that access and use it in ways that push forward and move the dial on issues of divestment, on investment in alternative energies, so I think it's about broadening our horizon also in terms of what we mean when we talk about a climate movement and what we mean by protesting. It's not all protest, it's about engagement, it's about protest, it's about shifting the dial. I'm a great fan of Joanna Macy. I'm sure many people know the work of Joanna Macy on Active Hope. If you don't, it's wonderful to read. And she talks about this. She talks about the fact that the work of resistance is essential, and it's about preventing the damage and mitigating the damage. And I know that many of you have done the most incredible work in that front, literally putting your bodies on the line to prevent the damage of the expansion of fossil fuels and other climate damage. We, at the same time, we need the work of building the future. So constructing the future that we want to live into. So they're not opposites. They're part of the same continuum, and they're part of, and then we need the work of transition. So we almost need the people who are like prepared to be the dreamers, but also get on with the work of demonstrating we can live sustainably, we can live with lower consumption, in more community-based economies, and get on with that. Start the grassroots work of building that and articulating what that means and developing the policies that we're going to need for that work. We also need the resistance, and we need that bit in the middle, which is navigating the transition. And we're right now, I think that's where we are in terms of at the start of a transition, but facing the rearguard action of many who would prefer if that transition wasn't happening.
Yeah. So there's something in there about modelling and being the change we want to see, but it's about everything from everybody, isn't it?
Yeah. Every job's a climate job now. That's my mantra.
Yeah.
If people don't feel that they're working for climate justice, then what are you doing? You know, like, even if you're a nurse, you have to be working in some way towards public health and climate change, or, you know, every job has to have that dimension of climate justice, at least as a citizen, we need to feel that really strongly, that to me, it's about parenting as well. That's, the book is all about that. How can you bring kids up into a world and honestly stand over and say, to me, the weekly protests, which I don't make every week now, but we started them together in outside the Irish Parliament. It's 250 weeks this week since we started that protest. Like, that to me is about parenting as well. That's about, it's just, trying to do good parenting.
I mean, you lead by example, don't you? And it's interesting, we also have a vigil outside Parliament every week, outside the English Parliament. So if anybody here wants to join, that happens on a Wednesday between 11 and 3. I just want to ask you another question before I open this up to the floor, because you also talked about community. And in August this year, you were interviewed actually for the Church Times. It was an interesting interview, and some of the themes that you've spoken about tonight relate to some of the things that you spoke about in that interview. And you said big changes will only happen if we come together. And when I was reading that this afternoon, I couldn't help but relate it to the sort of Restore Now movement and the rallies that are going to happen tomorrow, which have succeeded in getting the Worldwide Fund for Nature and RSPB out onto the streets for the first time. But in the letter, the focus is kind of on coming together of the global community. And I was wondering whether you think our society particularly in the UK or in Ireland, in Europe, can make that vital shift from the perspective of our own interest to the perspective of the common interest as a human family.
It's a really, really good question. Yeah, I mean, I think that I talk about it in Climate Generation as well, this idea of a planetary movement. And I think I'm very hopeful in terms of the changes and the shifts that I see happening in terms of movement building. As I said, I think that we have suffered as a climate movement during the COVID crisis, in terms of the visibility and the prioritization. But I do see now that people coming together, there is a shift, and there is certainly in Ireland a shift towards the localization of those topic or of the climate movement, but combining that then with articulation at a global national level is, I mean, I have to believe that the human spirit is driven towards community, and that we have the capacity to move beyond. I think it also comes from my faith, that sense that we have the capacity. We learn that in terms of our own families, and can extend that sense of community and family onto a wider level. It's not easy, definitely not easy. But when I think of the work that we've been doing with different faith communities through FaithInvest, our biggest challenge often is that this work is invisible. It's not seen. The work that the Sikhs are doing around sacred forests, the work of the Buddhists around land restoration, the work that all the different faith communities are currently doing, and doing it on the basis of their own teachings. It's something sacred. And all the work that's happening within the Christian world around the rewilding of churchyards, around I could go on and on and on about all the different initiatives. And it's really, when you focus on that, it's really encouraging and giving people, I think, the opportunities to tap into that. Often people don't feel that they're asked. The single biggest thing, that obstacle for people volunteering, is that they feel they've never been asked. So trying to provide those opportunities where people can learn, people can get involved, whether it's in a faith community dimension, if that's where their local community is, or whether it's through, in Ireland, we have a lot of different community associations, I'm sure similar in the UK, like we have Tidy Town, she talked about the RSPB, getting people engaged in wherever their entry point is, and feeling that they can be part of this bigger movement through engaging at that local level in the issue, because climate change affects everything, but in the issue that most interests them, making it relevant to them, I guess, is the most important thing.
Oh, I have so many other questions that I want to ask.